Well, that was pretty much exactly what I thought it would be. Yes, Queen! Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Here we are once again, back on the vicious cycle of mediocrity that is Disney Plus Marvel shows. And before anyone starts with the if you don't like it, don't watch it bullshit, let me remind people of one very important thing about entertainment. That being the existence of criticism has always been a huge part of this industry. Now, if you're one of those people who take everything at face value, and you're simply happy with everything that has Marvel Studios in the title, then I'm happy for you. But that doesn't mean that the rest of us can't call this shit what it actually is. Some people are very clearly fine with mediocrity or worse. I just so happen to expect a little bit more from my entertainment.
Fuck me, right?
Especially when it's coming from the biggest entertainment company in the world. And everything I'm going to say today is based on that idea. It just comes down to the fact that some of us have higher standards. What's funny is that I know people are going to come out of the woodworks to try to defend this show's honor.
Bobby, I'm your white knight.
Meanwhile, the people involved with actually making it are proving my point for me. Like this story where the She-Hulk lead writer admits that the series was originally planned as a legal procedural, which honestly could have been somewhat interesting for a Marvel show. At the very least, it would have been something different than what they normally give us. But then apparently during the planning process, something happened. The writer's room for She-Hulk quickly realized that, quote, none of them were adept at writing rousing trial scenes. Then maybe, just maybe, you weren't the right person to be writing this show in the first place then. Because I gotta be honest, after seeing the dialogue that you did write and that did make it into the final show, I'm not impressed, and let's just say it's not exactly A Few Good Men.
You can't handle the truth!
But I'm sure people are still going to defend it, even though they are quite literally admitting that they have no idea what they are doing. Let me ask this question. Does anyone honestly think that episode 1 of She-Hulk is the best possible episode we could have got to introduce us to this character? If this is the best that those writers and directors could produce, then I think Marvel has placed their faith in the wrong group of people.
That makes sense.
Episode 1 premieres are typically designed to grab your attention and to make you want to keep watching. And I swear to you, not one thing happened during this episode that made me think this show is heading anywhere of any kind of value. If you don't believe me, let's break down what actually did happen in episode 1. First of all, I have to point out that I'm most thankful that this episode was only 37 minutes long, because I don't think I could have handled much more. Maybe we'll get lucky and all the episodes will be that short.
So, pretty please, with sugar on top.
So we get a flashback almost right away where we see She-Hulk becoming She-Hulk. And when I tell you it's the lamest and most glossed over version of her origin story that I think they could have possibly put on film. We're talking Jane Foster and Thor Love and Thunder levels of I don't give a fuck about this character. When you put that little time and effort into establishing a new character for your new series, how is anyone supposed to be legitimately invested in her?
I don't care!
And based on this lackluster origin, do we need any more proof that they could give two shits about the source material? Her and Bruce get into a car accident and his blood gets into her cut. That's it. This happens, of course, after some riveting dialogue about Captain America's virginity. A joke that they actually double down on in the post-credits scene, by the way. Marvel has become so good at ruining their own characters that they now are managing to ruin characters that aren't even involved in the story anymore. Way to ruin a perfect send-off to one of your best characters with juvenile bullshit.
I understood that reference.
In fact, there's a lot of juvenile bullshit in this episode, including jokes about burping and controlling your butthole. At this point, I was convinced that they brought in James Gunn for some rewrites. So a good chunk of this episode is Smart Hulk trying to teach She-Hulk how to control her anger, and in effect control her new abilities. Now, as stupid as the Smart Hulk version of this character actually is, and that's very stupid.
What an idiot! Oh, what a loser!
I would think that he would be the perfect person to listen to in this situation, especially if she's feeling a lot of uncertainty about how her life has just changed. If anyone knows what living with this curse is actually like, it's him, right? This also would have been a great time for them to re-establish the Hulk character, making him the more worthy and important character that he should be. Instead, they decided to double down on making him look like a fucking buffoon.
That's right, it stinks!
The best analogy I can think of for She-Hulk is she's like one of those guys at a party who always has a better story than the one that you're telling. You know who I'm talking about, those people who constantly have to one-up everyone else, and they usually sound phony when they're doing it. That's She-Hulk to me. I know a lot of people are disputing this fact, but I don't know how many times they mention in the actual dialogue that she is better than the Hulk. They're not even hiding it anymore. They even proclaim that she's better at controlling her anger than the Hulk is.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
But that's not the big reveal. The big reveal is why. Well, it's because she's been practicing controlling her anger her entire life. Because she's a woman and she's constantly being mistreated. She's catcalled in the street, she's mansplained to at her job. All of the misogyny in the world has been preparing her whole life to be She-Hulk. Subtle as a sledgehammer, isn't it?
Message!
And this is what good writing looks like to some people. She even proclaims that she would get murdered if she didn't learn to control her emotions. Great, so what's her journey in this series exactly? What does she have to learn at this point? Why are we even watching? She's been She-Hulk for like 10 minutes and she has everything figured out already. Roll credits. This is not how you write compelling characters, and nobody can convince me otherwise. And by the way, I always looked at She-Hulk in the comics as one of the few female versions of a male character that actually managed to step out from behind the male character's shadow and be her own thing. Marvel Studios instead decided to degrade the character of Hulk even further, all in an effort to build her up because they're too lazy to write a good story. Or at the very least, just pull from the source material a little bit more. No, instead they give us cringe. They give us camp.
Ha ha, very funny, motherfucker!
So much so that I thought I was transported back to the 1960s at one point while watching it. I would think that modern audiences would have developed more advanced taste at this point, but based on a lot of the reactions I'm seeing for this show, I guess I was wrong. Apparently, a slapstick fight between Hulk and She-Hulk, in which they bond over Cheetos afterwards, is peak cinema to some people. If this is what you think is peak for She-Hulk, then you obviously didn't have much faith in the character to begin with. This whole episode is designed to convince the audience that her situation is different from Hulk's and that Bruce really can't help her.
Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
When I envision Hulk stories coming to life when I was a kid, that goes for both Hulk and She-Hulk. I would have thought we would have gotten a deep psychological story about them dealing with the different sides of their personality, but no, instead we get conversations about spandex and doing yoga on the beach. But I'm too critical, right? I just don't know how to have fun. I'll have fun when these people learn how to write a competent fucking story.
Put some effort into it!
The episode finishes off with her hulking up in the courtroom after a supervillain barges in. Apparently the conflict is going to come in the form of her balancing her life as an attorney with the now public revelation that she is She-Hulk. Does anyone care? I'm sure some people do, but I sure as hell don't. When I say this is possibly the most basic level storytelling that Marvel Studios has produced thus far, I'm not joking. What I needed was the people creating this show to give me a reason to be optimistic moving forward. And in that aspect, they all failed miserably. In reality, She-Hulk Episode 1 was very reminiscent of all the other Marvel Studios produced Disney Plus series, where it all seems like they have no purpose other than to just simply exist.
Y'all be cool. Nah.